Gregory Clark,
Yeah,
thank you so much
my
for
pleasure.
being on this podcast. I came all the way out here because I couldn't help but want to take a second chance with you, second time doing this, because we did one, it was 17 years ago when I had success in Japan, and I came to your office over there by the A&A Hotel. Is the name right behind the A&A Hotel? And I went to your office there, and then that's when I found out how amazing your life has been. So 17 years ago. So tell me, let's start again, because many people watching this podcast won't know, like where you're from. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you were born.
Sure, yeah. Well, I was born in 1936, which
Okay.
is a long time ago, in England. And my parents moved to Australia when I was very young.
Hmm.
My father was an economist. And in Australia, he liked Australia. And he bought a farm. He believed in the country life.
Hmm.
And he also believed in big families. So big families and country life, they go together. But there's a lot of place to run around, put it that way.
Right.
But he ended up having a lot of children, of which I was the eldest.
Okay.
8 boys.
Wait, a total were 8 of you?
Mm.
And all boys?
And then eventually 1 girl.
So the last one was actually a girl?
Yeah,
And there are 8 of you or 9 of you then?
that's 9, yeah.
There's 9 of you. My goodness. Are all of your siblings still alive and doing well?
A few of them have conked out,
They've
but
come down.
yeah, they're all doing different things.
Okay.
They're all in different parts of the world.
Oh, really? So they're not all in Australia?
Oh, no.
Okay.
And Australia's not the only place you can succeed, you know.
That's for sure. Did they succeed where they went?
Oh, yeah, most of them have done well, yeah.
Okay.
And, well, I'm one of them. I did not stay in Australia.
Right.
For reasons, but so I brought up in Australia, went to university in England.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In those days, if you went to university in England, they regarded you as prime material for the diplomatic service. Meant that you didn't speak with a 100% Australian accent. I
Okay,
guess.
it meant that you had more of an English accent.
It helps in the world of diplomacy, anyway.
That's right.
And I came in. I was very young,
Mm-hmm.
too young, and so I had to wait around there for a couple of years before I got a posting. And then the opportunity came up to learn Chinese. They had not done anything since the war
Mm-hmm.
about teaching, having people learn Chinese. And it turned out I was the only one who applied, so I got it. In fact, I didn't want to go to China. I wanted to go to Europe. I had a girlfriend waiting for me in Europe.
Okay.
It's another story.
All right.
I wanted to go to Russia. So I even started to learn Russian, but instead they said, no, go to China. So I had 1 year, 2 years in Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
continuing learning Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And in retrospect, of course, that was the best thing I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, Chinese was not a big number, but subsequently.
That's right.
So after a couple of years in Hong Kong learning Chinese, they said, well, I came back to Australia. And then they said, well, look, one stage you learnt Russian, and we've got an opening in Russia. So why don't you go to Russia? So I ended up in Russia. And that was, again, one of the better things I've done in life. It was a good time. Russia was opening up, and I like Russian people. And so the only problem was that by the end of this, they were getting involved in Vietnam.
Mm.
And I knew from my China experience that something pretty horrible was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The Vietnamese would fight to the end.
Right.
And B, that they'd end up with a messy situation with China.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to resign, and which meant I had to find another job. In the process of resigning, I got involved with Rupert Murdoch, of all things. He was back in Australia. He was in Australia starting up a media empire. And in those days, people don't realize this. Rupert was a progressive. Rupert was progressive. And because I'd resigned in protest of the Vietnam War, he thought I was a great guy. And he gave me pages in his newspapers to write about the Vietnam War. So that got me involved, and to write about Russia and China.
Okay.
So that got me involved with media, which is also another useful thing to have in life. So the only problem was I didn't have a job.
Okay. Okay. Because you weren't being paid to do any of this. This was just you doing this. You weren't being paid for what you wrote into his paper?
Well, no. Obviously, they didn't pay you very much.
Okay, they didn't pay. Okay.
But I was doing it while I was doing other things.
Right. Okay.
The other things actually were quite interesting. I decided that since I couldn't get to China, and because staying in Russia became KGB bait. The KGB was really tough on foreigners, even though I liked Russia very much. So the only place to go was Japan. And if you know Chinese, Japanese is not so difficult. In fact, it's quite easy. And so I decided I'll go to Japan. First move was resigning and going to university to do study the economy of Japan, economics and so on. And then to get a job in Japan using the study of economics and so on. And Rupert Murdoch, well, he didn't know it at the time, but his manager in Australia, a guy subsequently became quite prominent in Australian politics, called John Menadue. They needed a correspondent in Japan. I had a little bit of the writing background by this time. So please take the job.
And this is a paying job this time?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Well-paying.
Well-paying job.
With accommodation.
Right.
And status.
Okay.
And a wonderful opportunity. I mean, Japan was really riding high in those days.
Right.
Well, you were
right
there.
after the Olympics. Right after the Olympics, the 1964 Olympics they finished.
Well,
so you're talking about that Vietnam. So you're talking about the 70s now.
The late 90s, the late 60s, early 70s, yeah.
This is early
Japan,
70s, right. I was here.
China was just opening up. Japan was opening up.
Right.
And it's a long story, but I got involved in the ping-pong diplomacy of 1971 while I was working as the correspondent for the Australian newspaper. And that was an experience.
I can imagine.
Ping-pong. Actually, Australia, it was so anti-China that it was the only country that refused to join the ping-pong diplomacy. So I went out and found the ping-pong players and said, hey guys, would you like to go to China? Oh yeah, why not? Says, okay, I'll organize it. So I sent a telegram to China, say, hey, I've got a team of Australian ping-pong players here, ready to go. And away we went. And I finally got to China, which to me was a very big thing because I spent years learning Chinese, and you want to use the language. So away we went, and then China opened up, so I got in there a few more times, delegations and nothing. But it was a bad time in China. It was the Cultural Revolution, which was really pretty bad, much worse than people realize, actually. So I was very happy to be back in Japan, and big things were happening in Japan. You were around.
I came in '74.
Oh well, okay.
But I was still in the boom time. I mean, it was still they were making bowling alleys and tennis courts everywhere. They were
Right.
buying everything in the world, and
Yeah, and this
Australians
was
were
when
mad at them.
Japan is number one.
That's
And
right.
The Japanese really believed it. You know,
That's
they were
right.
going to take over
That's
the
right.
world.
They
And
sure
the
did.
Americans believed it,
They sure did.
that they were going to take over the
Well,
world.
everyone did. Everyone did.
And
Australia
the
did.
Americans were getting pretty angry
They were getting
about
scared.
it.
They were burning radios and,
Well, like
and
you are,
bashing
like
cars.
you are today with China, yeah.
Mhm.
It never stops.
It's one after the next.
Uh,
Sheesh, isn't that
anyway,
funny?
no, but you know, Japan was the flavour of the month.
That's right.
So it was a great time to be there.
Mhm.
But then, so I had 4 or 5 good years,
Mhm.
really good years, and met a wonderful woman and started to have a family.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we eventually had a change of government. Now, don't tell anyone this, but as a result of my meeting these ping pong players, and that was an accident, China became the flavour of the month in Australia. And the government which had opposed the ping pong diplomacy
Mhm.
got thrown out. So the guys, as a result, the good guys,
Mhm.
got in. And they remembered who I was. So the good guys, or one of them anyway,
Right.
said, hey, come and work in Australia, come and work in the government.
And that's how you got involved with the Australian government.
So that's how I got involved with one thing leads
To another, you never know.
Lance, I don't have to teach you about life, but
No,
I
you have
just
a lot
tell
you
you.
can teach me.
I just tell you, one thing always leads, the clue in good, how to put it, Korean or whatever it
Right.
is hang loose. Because one thing always leads to another, which
Right.
leads to another.
Another, right.
And
And keep your, but you have to be open to it too.
that's what that,
Because
that's what's involved in hanging loose.
that's right. That's that's why. Okay, I got
Keeping
you.
yourself educated.
Right. Right.
Keeping yourself available.
Right.
Never closing off options. Anyway, I had this option to go back to Australia to work in the government. And that was very interesting. I was in the Prime Minister's department. And I met some good people.
So what was your position? What were you called?
I was an advisor to the government, yeah.
That's really good.
What they call it.
That sounds good.
It was a little unit, strategy unit.
Mm-hmm. That they made up just so that you could do it.
Not
they
just
wanted
for
you to
me.
do. Oh, was it just?
Four
Oh, they
or
were
five
doing.
other,
Okay.
4 or 5 other guys
Mhm.
that they liked.
Right.
So we were in this strategy unit. But unfortunately, they didn't listen to our advice, so the government collapsed. There was a guy called Whitlam, Gough Whitlam. It's a very famous story, actually. He was a bit left-wing. CIA moved in. One thing led to another.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't hang loose enough, put it that way.
He got a little bit too tight.
And so he was out of a job, and so was I.
Okay.
But there was always Japan,
Mhm.
okay? And I said, if I go back to Japan, something good will happen. And sure enough, I had the outline, manuscript of a book called The Japanese Tribe. I decided in those days, everybody wanted to know, what are the Japanese? Who are they? What are they doing? And I said, it's simple. It's a big tribal society. And so I published that book, and the book took off. So the university started to look at me. And I got a good job at Sophia University. You know Sophia?
Two of my sons graduated from Sophia.
Okay, well,
From Jochi.
if they'd been a bit earlier, I could have been teaching them.
That would have been wonderful.
But anyway, I got a job there teaching economics.
Okay. But that's when they had the small campus. Because,
Yeah.
you know, they built a brand new, they've gotten rid of the small campus. Now it was by the TV station. What TV was that? Asahi TV?
Nihon Television.
Nihon Television was right next to it, the campus you had, and that was for the foreigners. But now they're right there at Yotsuya at the main campus. They built everything there, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, well, talking of TV, I used to go on that TV a bit. There were, there were a lot of interview programs interviewing foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
Foreigners used to be pretty important in those days, as you remember.
I do.
Anyway, we used to go on TV, and hey, Guess who was the caster for my TV program?
Who was that?
A cute little lady called...
Oh, wait. I know who it was.
on television. Yoike.
Yuike. Oh, Yuike. I was thinking about someone else. Okay, wow.
So we became friends too. But anyway, no, the TV helped. The book helped. But in particular, I got on the lecture circuit. Now, in those days, the lecture circuit went from one end of Japan to another with about 100 stops in between, okay? And by this time, I spoke fairly good Japanese. There were very few foreigners in those days who could speak Japanese.
That's true.
And which meant that, well, the lecture circuit was open season. And I reckon in this just one lecture after another, while I was holding down the university job at Sophia. And then I got offered a job as the president of another university called Tama University.
Okay.
It's a specialist business university.
Okay.
And meanwhile, the lecture circuit's still going on. And I'm being asked to write more books about Japan. So
Did you write more books?
I did, yeah. They're not very good.
Okay, but how many total would you say you
Maybe
wrote?
about 6. Yeah.
6 books, okay.
Oh, there was one good one. It took me 2 days. And what they do, it's called a tie-down book. And I recommend it highly to anyone who wants to get into it, if you can get into it. They book you into a hotel for a weekend, food, drink, everything you like, with a famous commentator, Japanese. And there are quite a few of them, right? And so you just sit there for 2 days and talk into a microphone about Japan and answer his questions, and it's backwards and forwards. They give it to a very good editor, pulls it all together. It comes out as a very neat little paperback.
Right.
Sold 17,000 copies.
17,000 copies.
17,000 copies.
Just 2 days of doing, just coming off the top of your head.
Right. But well edited, yeah.
Wow.
But it was, if anything, I think it was one of the better books, yeah, because you're talking freely and the other guy's talking. So you're bouncing ideas off each other. I highly recommend it if you want to get into the book game.
Okay. Wow.
Anyway, but you have to speak Japanese.
Right.
Anyway, this went on, and then the president thing was 6 years. And by this time I'd made friends with a guy called Nakajima Minio. And he was an expert on China too. And we talked a lot about China, and he'd actually read my book, and he liked one particular part of the book actually, and he was quite smart. He was fairly right-wing, and I was progressive, but that didn't matter. He realized that this part was important. So he said, look, I want to set up a university, a new university, where all the teaching's in English. This was the beginning of a thing called Kokusai-ka in Japan. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Kokusai-kan, yes. Yes.
The internationalization of Japan. So learning in English became the flavor of the month, and who's there? Who's there?
That's true.
Tasting the ice cream. So I just landed one of the very interesting job. What had happened during the bubble, the boom, the economic boom? Quite a few American universities had come in and set up branches.
They thought they could make it. They sure did.
And when the bubble collapsed, of course,
they did
couldn't
too.
make it.
They did too. That's right.
Well, no, they couldn't make it. So they were up for sale. So we were able to get one, a good one, up in Akita.
Okay.
And we offered to come in and create an English-speaking university with Japanese management, which is the key. Better than being run by foreigners, because you then had government backing and support. So we set up this university where all the teaching was in English, and I stayed there for 6 years. And it's gone on to be, in certain areas, the #1 university in Japan.
It still is, right?
It's called
now.
Akita International
Akita
University.
International.
Yeah.
Where's it located?
Up
In
in
Akita?
Akita.
Akita, yes, of course.
Long way, even though it's a long way out,
is,
out
up
of
north.
the boondocks,
Right.
the idea took on, and away we went. One of the good things about it is all teaching's in English. So it's open for foreigners who want to study in Japan. I mean, there's no way you can study in a Japanese university unless your Japanese is perfect, okay? So the teaching in English is good. It was up in the boondocks, so everybody lived together in a big dormitory-like place with one foreigner and one Japanese to each room.
One foreigner, one Japanese in each room?
To each room.
Okay.
So the foreigner's not speaking Japanese, but the Japanese are speaking English.
English, right.
So here's a wonderful way to learn English.
That's
okay?
true. Yeah.
And eventually, they'd become friends. If they weren't friends, they'd move to another room. But anyway, that university took off. By this time, I was getting very much involved in the Japanese countryside. It's beautiful. I used to do a lot of mountain climbing. In fact, when I first met you, Lance, I think we talked about it.
We sure did.
I just and my woman was into it too. And we go up every weekend and climb these 2,000 meter, 3,000 meter.
How many times have you climbed Mount Fuji?
Look, forget about Fuji.
I know, but I want to ask, how many times have you done that?
Yeah, you only do it once.
Okay, because I haven't done it once.
Oh,
I stood at the 5th station, talked to people coming down, and only 2 or 3 said they did it more than once. Everyone said they'd never do it again.
well, no, it's not all that difficult, but it's not.
I know
very,
it isn't.
It's not very beautiful.
It isn't. No.
There's no vegetation.
There's nothing. It's just all
No,
volcanic ash.
Just the other side of Mount Fuji is a place called the Southern Alps, and that's a string of 3,000 meters just below Mount Fuji, and they have vegetation, and
it is beautiful.
They have snow, and they have a lot of excitement, and we used to do a lot of that, and then one day the kids start to come along, and when you've got kids, you can't climb these mountains. So I discovered this area out here, the Boso Peninsula, south of Tokyo. Now, people just didn't know about it. They
Right.
still don't know about it
They
very
still
much.
know. There's a few
And yet
foreigners
it's
out
some
here.
beautiful country right on the ocean,
Right,
only an hour from Tokyo.
right.
And we bought some land, and
I know. How much of this mountain do you actually own?
where I am now,
Yes.
well, you can buy a whole mountain if you want. Yeah,
I know, but how much of this do you own? Because when I first met you, you may not remember this.
Yeah.
On your property, you showed me the area. You marked out 500 tsubo.
Oh, yeah.
And you were going to sell it to me. You said, Lance, you need to get some land here. You've been here forever. Get some land. And you were charging me only this. You were going to give it to me like that.
That was a genuine offer.
I know. I believe you. I believe you.
Because I ended up having to sell it to somebody else.
I know. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you
There's
did.
no way I could manage it.
Yeah.
And there's no way you
You
could
did
manage
it. That's
it.
right. Not at that time. Because
So,
my kids were young then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I knew what I could do. You have to know what you're able to do. But I really appreciate you for that because I knew you were sincere. You told me that. But you was just spare of the moment.
but at that stage I had 2 mountains. Which one were we talking about?
This was probably, I think it was close. No, it was the lower area of here.
No,
That wasn't it? So was that the other area?
we moved a long way from them.
Okay.
Okay, one had a kiwi farm. A kiwi farm.
Okay. No, it had a kiwi farm on it.
That was the original
Okay.
property. I discovered that kiwis grow beautifully out here. And so I started planting kiwis all over the place. And that's the family home, and we still have it.
You still have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there was another place I bought during the land boom. Another mountain. The mountains were very cheap in those days. Even in the land boom, they were cheap.
Because you have all those cabins. How many cabins?
Yeah, that's right. That's the
How many
one-
cabins? How many cabins over
That was the
there?
one you were going to.
I know, I know. How many cabins do you have over there?
Oh, we had about 20, I think.
About 20
eventually.
cabins. Right, a tennis court.
And a couple of houses.
And you had a whole bunch of stuff over there.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, well, it could have all been yours.
You're right. If I'd have
too
only,
much
only if
fun.
I'd been on door number 3.
Yeah, because I decided that being on the ocean was the thing.
And that's why it's beautiful. From here, you have this view.
So from there, right, the cabins, which have been turned into a sort of Airbnb operation.
Yes, yes.
And from there I've moved to here and keeping the kiwi farm. Okay. But here is another mountain which we've got about 4 or 5 houses, mainly rented out to Japanese and foreigners. And yeah, this is, I don't want anything more land, so I've had enough.
I guess 2 mountains would be kind of enough.
Well, you know, you've got to bring in the development, man. It's big. It's not my...
You got to stay loose. You got to be loose. No, it's okay. No, I've always enjoyed
You've got to bring in bulldozers. You've got to plant trees. You know,
I mean, it is labor intensive. It can be, if you want to.
Brain intensive
That's
too.
true too.
You've got to plan the whole thing.
That's right.
Anyways, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's constructive. Now, in the meantime, yeah, I've kept up writing.
So what's your latest book?
The latest book.
Yeah, you say you keep up writing. Come on, I'm putting you on the spot now. What are you writing about now? Economics, I'm sure.
No, look, nobody reads books nowadays.
Well, that's true.
You know what they read?
That's true.
They read blogs, podcasts.
That's right. That's
what
right.
they're doing. Come on.
Right. That's right.
I'm in your.
It's all digitized now.
I'm in your game now.
That's right. So you're doing? Oh, that's what you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
So you're
So I
recording.
put out I think a good blog. Yeah, it's called Between 4 Nations, 4 Languages, and 4 Professions.
That's the name of it.
Yeah, the blog.
Okay, so give me the blog name again, one more time, so people can get this.
Between 4 languages, 4 professions, and 4 nations.
Wow. By Gregory Clark.
Yeah. Anyway, it's my life story.
Okay. It's your memoir.
Yeah, which I've given you in 30 minutes, but it's already...
You sure have. But I appreciate it. I really appreciate it, Gregory.
Hey, man, we got a lot in there.
We sure did, didn't we?
Pretty compact. There must be a few things I forgot. Oh, I forgot about the KGB in Russia, man.
You want to talk about that a little
It's
bit?
on my blog.
It's on your blog. Okay, that's good. That's a good segue to your blog.
Oh, I know,
I love it.
that was really hairy, man,
Oh, wow.
when they decided to put their hooks into you.
And they tried to with you.
You see, what had happened, I'd gone to Russia. I only had a little bit of Russian, okay? But I was determined, you know, I had this odd thing about languages. And I love language. I like languages. Every language opens a new world to you, you know? Chinese is one. And at the moment it's Spanish actually, because I've found a lovely lady called Carolina from Peru.
Your wife.
And
she is
she's
beautiful.
really looking out
Where'd she
for
go?
me.
Where'd she go?
Where's she?
Carolina.
She should be offering us.
Carolina.
So she's gone to her room.
Okay,
Anyway.
okay.
So then when I got to Russia, I said I'm going to learn Russian. Now that's, of course, just raw meat bait for the KGB. The moment because you have to meet Russians. And I had a great way of meeting Russians. I was living near the university, and you'd go to the student restaurants in the evening. And Russians really are very sociable. You were not allowed to sit by yourself.
You're not allowed to sit by yourself?
No, it's unsociable. They insist you had to sit with other people. So I'd sit with a bunch of students. Man, within 5 minutes, conversation was underway, man. And we were talking hard politics.
Right.
You know, and they were basically, Gorbachev was at the same university with his wife just 3 years before I was in those student restaurants. And the whole liberation thing, the whole
started.
I know where he got his glasnost and the opening up of Soviet Union. It came from those student restaurants. I can tell you it was a very invigorating time. But the KGB out there is watching through the restaurant windows, you know, and eventually they move in on you. So that was unpleasant. But I had 2 years, great years, and there's a limit to when you're a diplomat, there's a limit to what they can do.
Right.
Although they do like to target diplomats. Yeah. So I look back on that as Now, Russian forces you to think about a lot of things, and not just politics. Much more than Japan does. There's a lot of depth to Russian culture. And of course now it extends across the whole world, you know, in Soviet days.
That's right.
So it was a good education, yeah. Japan I like, it's a very unusual culture. And explaining it as I tried to do in my book, The Japanese Tribe, you know.
Right.
Why are they so honest? To me that's the greatest attraction and the greatest mystery.
Why are they so honest?
Why are they so honest? You know, it's the old story. You leave a purse
your
loaded
purse
with lemon on a restaurant table.
And you get it back.
And you get it back. Somebody goes to a lot of trouble to get it to you.
That's right, they're right.
It's happened to me. How many times has it happened to you?
So many times I can't count now.
Yeah. Well,
And so many times I don't even worry about it. I stop. The first couple of times you worry, then after a while you expect it. You know it's going to come. But didn't they used to do this, Gregory? I just want to be sure. When I first came here in '74, it was still the practice because paying your taxes by cash, everything was cash. There was no credit at all in the 70s. They didn't even consider it. And they didn't have layaway, none of that. A lot of times when people, especially when it came tax time, would have millions of yen. And sometimes they'd forget the bags of money. So if you found the bag of money, gave it to the koban, it was tradition, I believe, that if the person came back to claim it, they would automatically, just by custom, give you 10% of it. Am I right?
Yeah.
They would give you 10%. They didn't have to. They wouldn't force it, but it was almost expected. And that was one thing that got people to give the money back.
it was very attractive. The honesty, the courtesy. But of course it means that, you know, it's not as we say, challenging as Russia or China.
Or any other country, for that matter, not just...
But, so there are pluses and minuses. But basically, yeah, no, I was very curious about the culture. So I came up with this theory, the tribal theory. It's like tribe, everybody's honest, right?
Okay,
Automatically.
that's right, yeah, automatically, right.
Yeah.
They belong to the same group.
Yeah.
That's
But
gotcha.
no, it fitted together.
That's why wadi was so powerful in the 70s.
Yeah.
Up to the 70s, then they started to dissipate, but they still teach it in elementary schools. The kids still have to think we.
The group exclusiveness and so on.
That's right.
It all fits together. And the Japanese like to have that explained to them, right? Because you have to explain the origins of it. Just doesn't fall out of the sky.
Right.
And it was a natural result of the isolation.
I was going to say that, over 200 years of isolation.
But then you have the problem, well, wait a minute, if they're isolation, how do they get so modern, you know? How come they're building all those factories? So you've got to fit all that together too. But
your book explains all that.
Well, yeah. But it says, you know, there are problems. And of course the problems are coming out now. The Chinese are just...
The speed at which they move because of that.
They're too slow.
Right.
Didn't matter in the 1970s, but it matters now. And
But
it's not manufacturing now. It's all digital.
Right. What about robotics?
Cyber.
Isn't Japan still the leader in robotics?
Robotics is a form of no. It's one of them. But I mean, the Chinese and the Americans are all doing pretty good too.
Okay.
But robotics was a form of, if it's manufacturing, they're good now. If you move into the area of intellectual...
Oh, yeah. Creativity.
Right. Yeah, ideas, yeah.
That's right.
You know, they didn't invent the internet, for example.
Right.
They
As
asked
US.
themselves, why didn't we do that?
Right.
Didn't invent Google.
Right.
A lot of things
Or
they didn't
eBay,
invent.
or a lot of stuff they didn't.
And now what's going on in China, yeah, they didn't invent that.
Well, China doesn't, I don't know that Chinese, I mean, historically they've invented a lot, but I mean a lot of recent stuff, they just took. They just copied it.
No, I've got...
You don't think so?
that was they're very intelligent people. And the 5,000 years of civilization apparently counts for a lot. And they've come up with a model of government which is not stupid. In other words, you you educate an elite.
That's right.
The problem with the present guy wants to be there forever. So.
Mm-hmm.
But before, when they changed over every 5 years or so, that was smart.
Yeah. Right. Well, isn't Russia gonna run into that with Putin? He doesn't want to go anywhere.
Well, you know, I quite like Putin actually.
Well, Putin's a day younger than me.
Oh, really?
One day. He's born the same year.
That's right.
Same year, October 7th. I'm October 6th.
So he's open to a lot of young ideas. What I like about him, no other leader, he will sit there for an hour, 2 hours, answering anybody's questions.
No matter what it is.
No matter what they are. I mean, compare that with Trump.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah.
Compare it with our own leaders now.
Right,
you know?
right.
If you get them to
A certain way. To get
sit there for more than 5 minutes, you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
He answers fluently. And you know, he's got a grip of all the facts. Oh no, he's not a bad leader. He'll be hard to replace.
I think he's made sure of that.
But he just has to put up with a lot of trouble. And they do it quite well. But no, the alliance, finally, the Russians and the Chinese, they don't mix.
I know.
It's oil and water.
I know that.
But they've finally been pushed together thanks to this strange American desire to dislike, well, both Russia and China at the same time. I mean, under Kissinger, they were smart. You just had one enemy, Russia, and they sucked up to China with what was that was part of it. The ping pong diplomacy
right.
was, in fact, the Kissinger diplomacy was, let's get on side with China, and then we'll be stronger against Russia. And then that worked out good, and they helped China a lot. And then China got too strong, so they said, okay, well, the enemy is now enemy number one is China. Okay, good. And they didn't get Russia on side properly, so they kept Russia as an enemy too. So the two of them said, okay, well, if we're going to be enemies,
we might as well be friends.
So they've linked up, and now they face a monster. Yeah, no way they're going to win out. And they've lost out in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was the linchpin. People don't realise because it fronts onto both Russia and China.
Right.
It's right between the two. And they're going to have a great time now from now on. You won't be able to stop them.
My goodness. Gregory, thank you for your time. I'm not going to take any more of it. I want to make sure they go to your not your podcast, it's a blog. Your blog. People should check out your blog.
GregoryClark.net.
Okay.
Yeah.
GregoryClark.net.
Yeah.
And they will get on that. And I hope you get a lot of subscribers and continue to stay as loose as you have been so that what comes along. And thank you for allowing me to come up to your place.
Yeah, I've enjoyed
really
it. Actually, I suddenly realized we've covered a lot of
We have covered a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to have to do any editing at all for this on tape. I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Make sure you click like, subscribe, and just remember, it's all unknown. Keep reaching for the stars, and you're too blessed to be stressed.